Welcome to Explore Music History. In this video, we will be looking at religious and secular music of the 16th century as presented in Chapter 6 of the Oxford History of Western Music by Richard Turruskin. The main topics of this video will include the Protestant Reformation and its effects on the music of England, Germany, and Italy. The Protestant Reformation was a series of revolts against the Catholic orthodoxy and has roots as far back as the 14th century. The first overt act, now associated entirely with the Reformation, was the posting of 95 Theses in 1517 on the Wittenberg church door by the German monk Martin Luther. His main importance with the Catholic Church was the buying of indulgences, sold by the Church to its worshippers as a way to buy time off from purgatory for one's ancestors or themselves. Followers of Luther's beliefs created the denomination of Lutheranism. This division struck a major nerve with the Roman Church and directly affected musicians. John Calvin was a Swiss reformer whose complete rejection of the Ars Perfecta left little room for music in his religious faction, with only one surviving book of metric psalms called the Geneva Psalter. Followers of Calvin's theology became the Calvinists or Huguenots in France. The Swiss-German Church of Ulrich Zwingli was the most hostile to the musical style, engaging in public burnings of organs and liturgical music books. Martin Luther loved music and played multiple instruments, sang, and did some composing. His idea for music was that everyone could be a part of it, and all people had the capacity to be musical, leading to his composition of the first German Mass. His ideology meant that a lot of the early Lutheran music was meant for congregational singing. Congregational singing became the distinctive musical activity of the Lutheran Church, in the form of the strophic unison German hymn known as the chorale. The term chorale originally meant chant, but the polyphonic style soon overtook its meaning. Many Lutheran chorales were adapted from secular songs and were new compositions intended to resemble traditional melodies. The first book of polyphonically arranged chorales appeared in Wittenberg in 1524. It was compiled by Johann Walther, who had become close friends with Martin Luther as a musician and assistant. The Lutheran chorale setting is very clearly organized around a cantus firmus. The accompanying parts were often played on the organ or by other ensemble instruments. The instrumental part of the chorale became known as the chorale prelude and would keep the cantus firmus strong while allowing for improvisation and embellishments. The melody soon moved to the soprano line, which has remained throughout Western music since. When the chorale is written or arranged entirely for a keyboard instrument, it is called a chorale partita. The Lutheran church music aimed to enhance the day-to-day lives of average students, worshippers, and families. The Counter-Reformation was the response of the Catholic Church to preserve the identity and authority of the Roman Catholic Orthodoxy. The Council of Trent arose in response to the Reformation and wanted to preserve the Ars Perfecta. The music of the Counter-Reformation shifted into being an overwhelming experience of polyphony, utilizing antiphonal choirs, split choirs, and resonant spaces, namely cathedrals. Two musicians who brought Catholic music to its pinnacle were family members, and both served as organists at St. Mark's Basilica under Giuseppe Zarlino. They were Andrea Gabrielli and his nephew, Giovanni Gabrielli. Andrea made music for theatrical presentations, including a set of choruses for Sophocles' Oedipus Tyrannus. It is the earliest surviving music specifically composed for a humanist revival of a Greek drama. Andrea also wrote sacred motets and several masses. Andrea published a piece that employed the word concerto on the cover. The term originally meant combining voices and instruments in the concerted style. In 1602, a Venetian publication of organ music by Lodovico Viadana used the term basso continuo. The basso continuo was originally an independent organ part, written as one line but realized in full harmonies. The left hand was meant to play the line with the chords happening in the right hand. The bass part of the organ shifted into being sung as the bass line in choirs and became an increasingly important innovation for the Baroque period. Giovanni Gabrielli was the first eminent composer to furnish definite specifications for the instruments in his concerted works. He published 11 concerted motets and a volume called Sacred Symphonies in 1597. He coined the use of the classic Greek word symphony, which meant things sounding together in harmony, to the new concerted style of music. Gabrielli also employed refrains in his music called ritornellos, meaning a little something that returns. The ritornellos is a characteristic style of the new concerto style. Gabrielli's music did not have a single point of imitation, showing how far from the ars perfecta music had come. Instead, there are motifs that pass between the voices, but not in a continuous fashion. By the turn of the 17th century, the Catholic Church decided it had better attract the faithful in any way they could, so they lessened restrictions for rules of liturgical music they had previously put in place. The Italian word sonata was gaining currency alongside canzona to be a new genre. Canzona sonata means played song, which got shortened down to sonata, meaning something played. Music printing in the early 16th century was pioneered by the Venetian publisher Ottaviano Petrucci. Music printing was more complicated than regular text printing, which is why it developed nearly 50 years after the Gutenberg Bible. Petrucci soon had a competitor, the Roman Andrea Antico, who opened shop in 1510. In Paris, France, music printing got underway when Pierre Attaignant started publishing in the mid-1520s. Attaignant made innovations to music printing that saved labor and costs, which completely transformed the business throughout Europe. By this time, a large form of household entertainment was using vernacular songbooks, and so the ability to read music, play an instrument, and sing became an important social skill. The Italian frottolo genre is a lightweight song, and the name was derived from the Latin word frocta, meaning a motley group of trifling objects. One of the greatest frottolo composers was Marco Cara, who was a great singer and lute player. The frottolo was the first musical genre since the 14th century to be produced by Italians for Italians. Claudine de Sermazy was a composer of the new style of French chanson from Paris, which incorporated fuller harmonies than ones of past centuries. Another Parisian chanson specialist was Clement Jankin, whose novel-writing contemporary, François Rabelais, both engaged in topics of rude humor. Orlando di Lasso was a prolific and versatile composer who was born in the Netherlands, started singing in Italy, and then worked in Germany for the remainder of his life. His compositions are of every secular and sacred genre that existed at that time, and in all four languages he spoke: French, Italian, Latin, and German. Lasso adopted a style of extreme, tonally disorienting chromaticism, coupled with a starkly homorhythmic, vehemently declamatory manner that challenged the ideas of the ars perfecta. The ars perfecta, the musical style valued for its universality and mixture of expression and perfected style, was beginning to lose validity by the 16th century. Composers like Lasso adapted their style according to functional and textual requirements. One genre born out of this adaptation was the reinvention of the Italian madrigal. The madrigal has no musical connection with the earlier strophic piece. The new form was continuous, with music that changed to reflect the text. The first madrigals were written by northerners who were employed in Italy and brought the polyphony from sacred motets and secular chansons. The Fleming Jacques Arcadelt published 5 books of madrigals between 1539 and 1544, by which time the madrigal had been established as the dominant musical genre for Italian poetry. Madrigal composers of Arcadelt's generation, especially northerners, tended to present poems in a fairly straightforward style, aiming at a general mood of gravity or charm. Arcadelt's first book of madrigals, published in 1539, became the most frequently reprinted music book of the whole 16th century and featured the white and sweet swan. The humanists believed that music should be the servant of the sense of poetry, allowed madrigal composers freedom for their musical radicalism and experimentation. Word painting and madrigalism became the terms associated with the freedom to reflect any given text with music. Real affronts to musical perfection emerged in the 1560s, beginning with the madrigals of Cipriano de Rori. Madrigals began forming into highly expressive and personally emotive works that would call for almost a sense of acting to be performed genuinely. The first of the great Italian-born madrigalists was Luca Marenzio, who spent most of his career in Rome. Alone and Thoughtful features a soprano moving in whole notes through what is perhaps the first complete chromatic scale in European art music. The elevated poetry and freedom of the Italian madrigal invited harmonic experimentation. A celebrated example of this freedom is Cruda Amarilli by Claudio Monteverdi. Monteverdi is considered a late madrigalist and the first great composer of opera. Not everyone liked this new type of music, though, and he was attacked for his fame by Giovanni Maria Artusi in a 1600 treatise titled Artusi's Book Concerning the Imperfections of Modern Music. The major attack against Monteverdi was about his lack of proper counterpoint rules. This shows how Artusi was not able to comprehend how the new form of music sought to exemplify the text rather than music as a science. Poetry at this time had become less articulate, giving up the sense of stylistic perfection and instead heightening expressivity. The ultimate stage of the Italian madrigal was reached by Carlo Gesualdo, the Prince of Venosa. Gesualdo had a notorious reputation as he ordered the murder of his unfaithful wife and her lover. His music engaged in deeply emotional and personal texts coupled with fully saturated harmonic progressions and chromaticism. Some composers began delighting not only in the sound of music but the appearance of it on the page. The German word Augenmusik, meaning eye music, is based on the visual appeal of notated music. Composers who created Augenmusik regarded the notation as part of the performance and went hand in hand with the print culture of the 16th century. Some examples are the coloring of the notes and decorations of words in relation to the meanings of the text and its symbolic music. Vernacular art music in England had a slower start than the continent. Little of the English song literature was set for vocal ensembles. Instead, it was mainly instrumentally accompanied solo airs, either with a small ensemble, a consort, or with a lute. The accompaniment parts were often contrapuntally intricate, the text melancholy, and the music respected the structure of the poem in the way the madrigals did not. The most important late 16th century composer of English verse before the influence of the continental madrigals was the lutenist John Dowland, who, along with William Byrd, was a Catholic. Dowland was a great writer and improviser on the lute, and he could therefore translate his music into a vocal ensemble. His musical form was derived from either one of the two main English ballroom dances of the time, the stately duple-metered pavane and the lively triple-metered galliard. The most famous pavane is his song Flow My Tears. English writer and publisher Thomas Morley is the credit for the English craze for Italian music after he published a volume titled Musica Transalpina in 1588. The volume included 57 madrigals of 4, 5, and 6 voices, translated by London native Nicholas Young. Morley continued to publish lighter Italian genres descended from dances like the canzonette and ballet. These genres have the fa-la-la refrains, which parody psalmization syllables associated with English madrigals. An important collection of English madrigals by various composers was published by Morley in 1601, titled The Triumphs of Oriana, in which Oriana stands for Queen Elizabeth I. Three other eminent English madrigal composers are the three W's, John Ward, John Wilby, and Thomas Weelkes. The English madrigalist deliberately curbed emotional intensity and avoided any but humorous references to sex. The English tended to set their madrigals to more trivial texts than the Italians. The dramatic sensibility was the great conceptual innovation lurking behind all the shocking stylistic novelties that doomed the ars perfecta and gave rise to that aggressively ornamented style conventionally deemed Baroque. Thanks for watching this video of Explore Music History, where we covered some of the topics discussed in Oxford History of Western Music, Chapter 6. If you liked this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out our other videos for other interesting topics.